Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Carolina Country Boy Classic. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about something that a lot of people overlook, and that is the 2-week crankbait bite window. He come up for it in such a weird way. This bite window typically likes to happen once that water temperature reaches 48 degrees right after the winter time, and it typically sticks around until about that 55-degree water temp. This usually lasts about 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks, depending on the weather that we get in the spring. But that short crankbait bite window, one of the baits that I like to throw, or style of baits that I like to throw, are the DT series crankbaits. Okay, this is a DT8, and man, what a crankbait. Let me put it to you this way. If there was one crankbait that I could throw for the entire early spring 2-week crankbait bite period, it would have to be a DT6 or a DT8. It just has incredible hunting action. You can stop it, you can drag it, you can do all kinds of things, deflect off of rocks. And for whatever reason, guys, it just gets bites, okay? And I've tried a ton of different other crankbaits, and I'll discuss those in this video as well. But what I'm going to really cover in this video is just how effective this crankbait is at getting big bites and a lot of bites in that early spring crankbait window. Once those water temps start crawling out of the 40s and creeping into the 50s, what typically starts to happen is you have a large majority of the fish get out of their winter patterns and get out of their wintering holes and their attitudes, and they start moving around. They start doing more things with themselves. They start moving to try to find better spawning habitat for the spring. And why the crankbait is such a powerful tool during that time is because they can be in a lot of different places, okay? And a lot of times you don't have the time to sit there and work a plastic or work, a jig or whatever you're trying to throw at them to get them to bite. Sometimes you have to hunt for them with a crankbait. And that's why I always say there's about a 2 to 3 week window where the crankbait is just incredible on the river. And I don't know what it is. I think that the fish are really keyed in on that red color because those fish are coming out of the sediment, and usually that sediment is a dark, black color, and it makes those crawfish turn red. So start keying in on that red color, and they start having those red lips, like I said in my previous videos. And what tends to happen a lot more is they start to react more to these type of baits, right? But a crankbait is so good because you can cover so much water with it, guys. Now, one of the biggest reasons that I'm able to capitalize on this crankbait bite every year is because I understand their seasonal patterns and seasonal behaviors. In the Broad River specifically, I do very well because I've been able to track and record all of these fish's movement throughout the river. And I've left it all in the description for you to check out. CarolinaCountryBoy.com. You can get that guide and get ahead of the pattern. The reason that I like these DT series crankbaits during this time of year over other crankbaits is its ability to hunt better than other crankbaits, all right? And you can change from a DT6 to a DT8 to a DT10, and you can change this with other crankbaits as well. But I really like that with Rapala, there's a lot more color selections as well, and you can really customize your approach to what you're doing on that particular day, right? If you have a crankbait box and you have different crankbait, series, you've got DT6, DT8, whatever, you can change your depths accordingly, right? So if you go fishing, laydowns, you might have a shallow DT, but if you go fishing like a deep eddy or a deep rock pile or something deep in slow water, you might want a DT10, right? I love the customization of the DT series, right? And I've talked with a lot of my friends who fish the river, and they all vouch for this crankbait, guys. The DT series is hands down got to be the best. A lot of the situations that you actually run into in the early spring crankbait period are not calm, clear conditions. A lot of times you have rain that is coming down the river, you have water that is flowing, you have a little bit of ginginess to the water. And for whatever reason, guys, I was just watching the MLF on Hartwell today, and I can really see why a lot of those guys are throwing these DT crankbaits, because a lot of the fish have something called beer goggles on, right? They make decisions that they usually wouldn't make in dingier water, right? And if they see it coming a mile away in clear water, they're probably not going to hit it, guys. Crankbaits aren't as good in clear water unless you have clear colors and no rattles, right? But in dingy water or off off color, stained water, this crankbait absolutely murders them, guys, because they don't have enough time to inspect it and know what it actually is. So one of the biggest reasons I throw a crankbait in that early spring, time period, that early crankbait time period, is because a lot of times the water is off color, right? And that off color water will actually trigger bigger than average bites, because those fish that are usually there and you're now catching them now because you're throwing something that they see, they hunt, and they grab. The next thing that I want to talk about with the crankbait bite, that 2 to 3 week window, is where to throw it, right? A lot of people don't realize this, but you're throwing the crankbait in the wrong areas, right? You can't just crank it in the middle of the river and expect to catch them, right? There has to be a rhyme or reason to where they're going in the pre-spawn, right? Like once that water temperature creeps out of the 40s and starts getting into the 50s, those fish are moving, right? You've got to find rocky transitions next to spawning habitat, or you got to find laydowns, wood. You got to find some kind of structure in the river, right? Something that blocks the current but is not a spawning area, right? Those are the areas that you want to kind of focus on with this crankbait. In fact, a lot of the fish that I was catching this past weekend with this crankbait are all the things I just mentioned. The next big thing that I wanted to talk about is how to fish this bait. A lot of people don't fish a crankbait correctly, and there's a lot of different things I can talk about, but I'm going to dial it into 3 things for you. The biggest thing, number 1, is bottom contact. If you don't have bottom contact, you're not fishing it correctly. You want this thing to deflect off a cover, and you want them to react to it. You have to deflect it off a cover. And the second thing I want to talk about is your retrieve, right? You have to play with this. Sometimes they like a slow, steady retrieve. Sometimes they like that slow, lethargic, runs into something and you pop it off real easy, and then sometimes they like that. Sometimes they like boom, 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 stop, boom, 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 stop, and it floats up, and then they grab it. Retrieve speed is a big deal when you're fishing a crankbait, because you have the ability to trigger the bites. This is the whole point of throwing a crankbait. And the last thing that I want to talk about is basically your casting angles, right? If you're fishing in a river, you're always going to have current, right? And you always want to be casting a little bit upstream of where you're actually trying to make a cast, right? If you're casting behind you and bringing it back into the current, you're not fishing it properly. What's going to happen is it's going to blow out, and it's not going to get down to the depth that you want to fish it in. And when you're fishing something upstream, it's a lot more natural coming down the river, and the current is not pushing against your line. Now, like I said, guys, this crankbait bite window usually lasts between 2 to 3 weeks. It really just depends on the water temperatures and the water clarity, right? Typically, by nature, the warmer the water gets and the clearer the water gets, the more locked in these fish are going to get into actually spawning and getting ready to spawn. So the closer we move to that point, the harder it is to catch them on that crankbait, because a lot more fish are starting to get locked in on something else, right? So the crankbait bite tends to die down after that. All right, guys, so the next thing I want to talk about is the gear setup that I throw this on. This is a 7'3" moderate action composite medium heavy rod. And the reason I like it is because it can throw DT6s, DT8s, DT10s, and it can handle all those depths very well. And when I hook into a fish, I barely lose these fish. I had a fish that I hooked last spring on a really big crankbait, and it had one of the last trebles in the corner of its mouth. And I fought it for a good 5 minutes. And basically, I didn't end up losing that fish, because the way that this rod bends when you hook into a fish is incredible. I have nothing but good things to say about these Cobb Series rods. Now, this is a Generation 1 Cobb Series. But another thing I want to talk about, guys, is your gear ratio speed. Now, a lot of people, they say a lot of different things, and they have this argument where 8's better than this or 6 is better than this. But the reason that I like a 6.4 to 1 gear ratio reel, which you can see that right there, 6.4, is because it allows me to slow down even when I'm not thinking about it, right? If you have a day where you're power fishing and you're constantly making casts, one of the biggest mistakes that people make is putting on a high gear ratio reel. Okay, you don't want to be fishing it so fast that you're not able to get those bites, right? You don't want to run it away from them very quickly, because it's easy to throw it out there, cast, bring it back in, throw it back out there. you know, but if you're doing the same motion you would do with a slower gear ratio reel, then it's going to make that crankbait slow down just a little bit for you and get those extra bites, right? So the next thing I want to talk about, guys, is your line choice, right? Now, this isn't any secret, but I like to throw 15-pound test on mine because in rivers you have a lot of rocks and cover and all kinds of things they can get wrapped up in. And, you know, sometimes you hook into catfish, and I like to get my crankbaits back, personally. But I know a lot of people that throw these crankbaits on 12. Some people throw it on 14. I've even heard people throw it on 8, you know, some of the finesse crankbaits that you can throw out there. But for just cranking, you know, and especially if I'm throwing a deeper diving crankbait, sometimes I'll actually beef up the line so it doesn't dive down quite as deep, right? Like there's a lot of different things you can do. You can play with this, but that's basically what I would throw for the gear. Now to wrap this all up, guys, I just want to say this. It is what you make it, all right? You can choose to throw whatever you want during that crankbait period, but I strongly suggest that you have one tied on and that you target that 4 to 8 foot range, those, you know, transitions, rocky transitions, and you just keep cranking, guys. Reason being is because the biggest fish of your life can be one cast away. And sometimes the crankbait is the best way to do that. With that being said, guys, if you want to quit guessing and you want to get straight on the fish, link down in the description if you want to check that out. But that's going to be it for this video today, guys. Keep it country, keep it Carolina. We'll see you in the next one.